She almost threw it in the trash. Just another checkbook left behind, she thought, until she saw the name. Jasmine Crockett. The signature that shook her bones. The waitress froze. Right there, in the middle of Bill's diner. Crumbs on her apron. Coffee, still burning in the pot. Because the woman at table 7, quiet, kind-eyed, no entourage, wasn't just another customer. She was a congresswoman, and she'd left behind more than a tip. She left a message that read, "I know what you did. You think no one saw, but someone did. It changed more than you'll ever know." And suddenly, the years came rushing back. A sandwich, a teenage girl, a Tuesday night long forgotten. Until now, what Kaylin gave that night wasn't charity. It was survival. And Jasmine, she never forgot. Stay with us. Because this isn't just a story about a tip. It's a story about the moment one black woman saved another and never even knew it. Subscribe and stay because silence no longer protects us. Kaylin didn't see the woman's face clearly when she first sat down. She was halfway through cleaning up a spilled milkshake from a toddler's tantrum at table 3. Her sneakers stuck slightly to the floor. Too much sugar. Too little time. It had been that kind of shift. Bill's Roadside Diner. Just off highway. 290-inch Brenham, Texas. Was never supposed to be her. Forever. But 4 years had passed in the blink of a tired eye. Same tables. Same chipped mugs. Same old jukebox that only played gospel on Sundays, even when nobody asked it to. The name tag on her chest had faded to just K-in. The rest had been scratched off by time, heat, and dish soap. She'd just finished restocking the coffee filters when Rosa, the other waitress on duty, called out, "Table 7's, all yours." Kaylin barely looked up. She didn't expect much. Maybe a pair of truckers looking for pie, or a couple killing time before a movie in College Station. But when she turned, it was just one woman, alone. She looked familiar in the way someone from a dream does, like a memory half-formed. Mid to late 30s. Hair pulled back in a soft twist. No makeup. No phone on the table. Just a green blouse, faded jeans, and eyes that didn't flinch. Just coffee and the chicken fried steak. "Please, extra gravy if that's okay," the woman said, smiling. Something about the way she said it, like she was ordering comfort, not food, made Kaylin pause. And then the woman added softly, "Take your time. I'm just here to breathe." That sentence lingered longer than the smell of onions on the griddle. No one ever said that here. Not the businessmen who barked about bad service. Not the students who rolled their eyes when their Wi-Fi cut out. Not the tired mothers juggling screaming toddlers. Just here to breathe. It sounded like permission to slow down, to exist, without demand, without explanation. Kaylin served the meal. The woman never asked for a refill, never checked the time. She ate like someone who had nowhere else to be, and that was rare in Brenham, where everybody seemed to be rushing toward something that didn't want them anyway. Then came the check. Routine. Familiar. Predictable. Kaylin slipped it onto the table, gave a tired nod, and turned away. She had 2 more hours left on the clock and was already counting the seconds. When she returned to table 7, the woman was gone. No goodbye. No wave. Just the check folder sitting alone in the dim light of late afternoon. She opened it, expecting a $5 tip, if she was lucky. Maybe a napkin, scribble thanking her for the gravy. But what she found stopped her cold. A note, folded, 4 lines, handwritten in smooth black ink. "I know what you did. You think no one saw, but someone did. It changed more than you'll ever know." Signed, Jasmine Crockett. The pen slipped from Callan's hand and hit the floor with a soft clink. Jasmine Crockett. That name she hadn't heard in years but had never quite forgotten either. The check folder felt heavier in her palm, like it carried the weight of a decade. Like a Door cracked open in her memory, and behind it, the sound of a chair being pulled out in a dark room. A sandwich. A silence. A moment that had gone unnoticed until now. But why now? Why her? Who leaves a note like that? Not angry, not cryptic, but almost sacred. Kaylin clutched the slip of paper. The handwriting wasn't dramatic. It wasn't demanding anything. It felt grateful, like something had been repaid, and she didn't even know she'd given anything. She sat in the break room minutes later, the note folded in her lap, as her fingers traced the creases like they held answers. She tried to remember. Had she done something? Saved someone? Offended someone? But no, it wasn't guilt she felt. It was something more haunting. Recognition of a debt she didn't know she was owed, of a life she touched and forgotten. Kaylin didn't know it yet, but this moment was going to unspool everything. Not just her memories, but her meaning. Because sometimes the real story doesn't begin with a tragedy. It begins with a tip left behind and a truth that refuses to be quiet. It came back in fragments. Not a flood, not at first, just a flicker. A rec center, a long hallway that smelled of pine cleaner and sweat, a vending machine that ate your quarters, and the girl, she wasn't loud, didn't cause her problems, didn't linger too long in the light. She came in early, left late, stayed quiet. That's what Kaylin remembered most. It was over 10 years ago. Kaylin had been 19, tired, broke, hungry, and sleeping in her car parked around the back of the local food pantry. She took temp work at a community center south of Dallas. Nothing fancy. Janitorial duties mostly clean up after events, wipe down the chairs, lock up when everyone else had gone home. It was lonely work, but quiet. And in that quiet, she noticed things. There was always one kid who didn't leave when the others did. A girl maybe 17, tight ponytail, oversized hoodie, a backpack that sagged from the weight of something other than school books. Never smiled, never asked for anything, but always showed up. Kaylin didn't know her name. She never asked, because something about the girl's silence said, "Don't press, don't pray, just let me exist." One evening, after a youth workshop wrapped up, Kaylin found herself staring at a table of leftover sandwiches, plastic wrap crinkling under the flickering fluorescent lights. The volunteers had gone. The fridge was already full. She almost tossed the extras, but then she saw the girl sitting on the edge of a folding chair, hugging her backpack like it might disappear if she let go. Kaylin didn't think. She just grabbed the sandwich, walked over, and placed it gently on the table beside her. "Hungry?" she asked. The girl looked up, not startled, not grateful, just surprised, like no one had offered her anything in a long, long time. She took the sandwich with both hands, held it for a second, then nodded. No words, just that. Kaylin sat down across from her, didn't talk, didn't ask. She just sat, let the silence be full instead of awkward. They sat that way for maybe 10 minutes. It felt longer. It felt like a pause in the world. Eventually, the girl stood, tucked the sandwich into her bag, and left. Kaylin never saw her again. Until now, until that name. On the note, Jasmine Crockett. The same girl. It didn't seem possible. Kaylin pulled out her phone in the break room, hands trembling, and typed the name into the search bar. Dozens of articles appeared instantly. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett calls for affordable mental health care across Texas. Crockett speaks on homelessness at U.S. Capitol. She grew up hard, rose fast, and never forgot where she came from. One headline read, Kaylin stared at the screen, heart thudding. A wave of emotion rushed in confusion, pride, disbelief, and something deeper, Did I do something that mattered and never knew it? She couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the girl again. The backpack, the sandwich, the silence. Had that moment meant something? Had it kept Jasmine going one more day? She thought about how many times she had wanted to quit back then. How often she felt like nothing. She did mattered. How invisible she felt. And now, someone had remembered her, had come back. Not to shame, not to burden, but to thank. It was overwhelming. Because in a world where black women are often overlooked, where being kind is mistaken for weakness, where surviving is celebrated, but softness is not, this moment felt like a revolution. Small, quiet, indéniable, a sandwich, a chair, the silence. Callan had given that night what she didn't know she had dignity. And now, a woman with a microphone, a platform, and a whole nation watching had come back to say, you mattered. Even when no one said so, Callan hadn't driven further than 30 miles in years. The farthest she ever got from Brenham was the grocery store, 2 towns over, and that was only because their deli section had fresher bread. But that Saturday, she put on a clean shirt, tied her curls tighter than usual, and pointed her rusting Honda Civic toward College Station. Not for shopping, not for errands, but for something else. Something heavy. Something unfinished. Jasmine Crockett was speaking at a community forum open to the public. No security lines. No formal tickets. Just a flyer online that read, An afternoon of listening. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett on community. Hunger and healing. Healing. Callan wasn't sure if that's what she was after, but something inside her had begun to stir like a seed cracking beneath hardened soil. As she drove, her mind replayed that night over and over. The sandwich, the silence, the girl. Could it really have meant that much? She parked near the back of the community hall, heart hammering in her chest. Inside, the room was modest. Folding chairs, a makeshift stage with a microphone, homemade lemonade in styrofoam cups, and people young and old, some in jeans, others in Sunday best, all waiting for her, Jasmine Crockett. When she entered, the air shifted, not because she commanded it, but because she calmed it. No loud voice, no entourage, just her, in a navy blazer, slacks, and the same stillness Colin remembered. She spoke with clarity, not from a teleprompter, but from memory. She talked about hunger, not as a concept, but a personal fact, about sleeping in borrowed beds, about wondering if tomorrow was worth the wait. And then she said, sometimes all it takes is one person, not to fix you, not to rescue you, just to see you. Callan's breath caught. The sentence wasn't general. It was surgical, like it had been written for her. When the talk ended, Jasmine stayed to meet folks, take photos, shake hands. Callan hesitated. Then she stepped forward slowly, and their eyes met. For a beat, neither moved. Then Jasmine tilted her head. You're not from here, are you? She asked softly. No. Callan replied, voice dry. Drove in from Brenham. Jasmine's eyes flickered a mix of memory and something deeper. Were you at the diner? Callan nodded. Table 7. That was all it took. Jasmine's whole face shifted. Not in surprise, not in shame, but in something softer, like a full exhale. I didn't know if you'd remember me, she said. I didn't. Not at first, Callan replied, pulling the note from her jacket pocket. But then I did. They stood there, 2 women, 10 years apart in time, bound by one act of kindness. Colleen didn't cry. She didn't need to, because Jasmine already had the words. You didn't ask my name. Jasmine said, you didn't ask what I'd done. You didn't treat me like a problem to be solved. You just stayed. Callan looked down. I didn't think it mattered. It did, Jasmine whispered. For years, I told myself, If I ever had the chance, I'd find you and I'd say thank you. There was no spotlight, no cameras, just two women standing in the quiet truth of recognition, one who had survived, one who had never stopped giving, even when it cost her. In that moment, Kellen realized it wasn't just Jasmine who needed to say thank you. She needed to hear it too. Because when you spend your life invisible, being seen can feel like a revolution. They stepped outside. The crowd inside buzzed with lingering conversations, campaign buttons, and folded chairs being stacked away. But out here, the air was quiet. Late afternoon, sunlight spilled across the parking lot, painting their shadows long on the asphalt. Jasmine leaned against a brick wall. Callan stood a few feet away, arms crossed, unsure if she was ready to hear what might come next. I didn't come to make this about me. Jasmine began. I didn't even know if you'd be there that day. I just needed to be in that space again. Colleen studied her, this woman who had once been a ghost in a rec center hallway, now standing in slacks and polished shoes, holding the weight of a nation's forgotten in her voice. You remembered all this time. Colleen said quietly, I remembered you. Jasmine replied, you didn't preach. You didn't pray. You just sat there like I was worth sitting with. Kaylin felt her throat tighten. She'd sat with hundreds of people since that night. Tables of noisy kids, grumpy regulars, lonely truckers. She couldn't remember most of them. But Jasmine, she'd remembered her. I wasn't trying to save anybody. Callan said, I was just trying to make it through the night. Exactly, Jasmine answered. And that's what made it matter. Callan let that sit. So often, people thought impact came from podiums or protests, from grand gestures, from microphones. But sometimes, it came in plastic-wrapped sandwiches and silence shared over folding chairs. What I said in the note, Jasmine continued, wasn't just thanks. It was truth. That moment, it changed everything. I carried it with me to college, to law school, to Capitol Hill. Calling raised an eyebrow. To the United States, Congress. That moment, yes, Jasmine said firmly, because back then, I didn't believe I mattered. I thought I was disposable, forgotten. You didn't try to fix me. You just let me breathe. Do you know how rare that is? Kaylin, she didn't. But now, hearing it, she began to understand. In a world that rushes past, Black women demands their strength, but rarely their softness to be offered dignity without question is revolutionary. Kaylin leaned against the opposite wall. The bricks cooled through her shirt. So why now? She asked. Jasmine hesitated. I've spent years talking about change, fighting for policy, but I kept thinking, if I could find the person who made me believe I was still human, I needed to look her in the eye and say, you mattered. Kaylin nodded. Slowly, for the first time in years, someone was saying that she mattered. Not her labor, not her tips, not her ability to carry trays with one hand, but her, and she didn't know what to do with that. I've been working double shifts, she said. Same shoes for a year. Still living paycheck to paycheck. Some days I wonder if I'm even moving forward. Jasmine smiled softly. And yet, you're still showing up. They stood in silence. Then Jasmine reached into her coat and pulled out a small envelope. No pressure, she said. Just something I'm building. It's called the Pause Project. It's about moments. The kind that don't make headlines, but save lives anyway. Callan took it with trembling fingers. You want me involved? She asked. I already told you, Jasmine said, stepping back. You saved someone once, without even knowing it. Now maybe you can help others do the same. The words weren't dressed in political spin. They weren't for a press release. They were for her, for Callan, the tired waitress who gave a stranger a sandwich and unknowingly fed the soul of a future congresswoman. The diner looked the same. Grease-streaked windows, flickering neon, a jukebox that only played 3 working tracks, 2 country ballads, and 1 faded soul classic that skipped on every chorus. But Kalin was not the same. Something in her spine sat straighter now. Her eyes, still tired, no longer looked hollow, because something had shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but surely. The envelope Jasmine gave her that day sat tucked inside the drawer by the register. She hadn't opened it again. Not yet, but she carried its weight like a new kind of compass. A week had passed since that Saturday, and in that time, the world hadn't stopped. Bills still came. Tips were still short. Customers still asked for lemon after you'd already filled the tea. But Kalin moved differently now. She paused more. She listened more closely, because she realized that, while she had spent her life being useful, what she had also been, and never named, was necessary. It was Rosa, of course, who posted the story first. She'd overheard just enough to be dangerous. Kalin on the phone in the break room, talking about some congresswoman and a note from 10 years ago. Then she saw the card pressed a little harder. And when Kalin finally gave in, spilled the whole story over a burnt pot of coffee and a cigarette break, Rosa didn't blink. "Girl," she said, "you don't get to keep that to yourself. The world's starving for something real." Kalin protested. "It's just a story." Rosa shook her head. "No, it's the story." By Monday, a local reporter picked it up. By Thursday, it hit the national news. The title wasn't flashy. A sandwich, a note, a congresswoman, but the words beneath it moved like gospel. Not because they were dramatic, but because they were true. People didn't need another scandal. They didn't need another polished press release. They needed proof that a quiet moment could echo louder than a speech. Kalin said no to interviews, no to the podcast, no to the network that offered a segment. "I'm not looking for fame," she told Rosa. "I'm just trying to work." But even as she said it, she knew something had changed forever, because the phone kept ringing, not with noise, but with need. Women from across the state, waitresses, janitors, single mothers, grandmothers, wrote letters, told their stories, said things like, "I didn't know I mattered until I read about you," or "I've been Kalin. I am Kalin." And something inside her cracked open wider, not into fame, but into purpose. She started small. Thursday nights, she'd pack up a cooler of sandwiches just like the ones from the rec center and drive to the edge of town, where the railroad tracks met the abandoned gas station. A handful of people always waited there, too tired for pride, too forgotten to beg. She didn't ask questions, didn't give lectures. She just showed up. Some nights, they took the food without a word. Other nights, they asked her name. Every night, she remembered the girl who once clutched a backpack with both hands and didn't believe kindness was real. One Thursday, weeks later, Kalin opened the drawer again, took out the envelope, finally unfolded the second note. Inside was just one sentence. "You gave me the space to breathe. Now let's build more." And beneath that, not a signature, just a card from the Pause Project. She closed her eyes, thought about every invisible woman she'd ever served, every mother who'd scraped tips into envelopes, every teenage girl walking into shelters, wondering if they were already too late. Then she whispered to the empty diner, "Maybe I'm not supposed to change the world. Maybe I'm just supposed to see it." And that was enough. In a world loud, with noise and neglect, what if the most radical thing we can do is to pause long enough to see someone, to feed someone, to believe that even in the dim corner of a rec center, one sandwich can echo all the way to Capitol Hill. This story was never about headlines. It wasn't about Congress or campaigns. It wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about being seen. One tired waitress, one teenage girl, One silent moment between strangers that bloomed into something far more powerful than either could have imagined. Because what Colin gave that night wasn't charity, it was dignity. And what Jasmine Crockett carried from that night was not just full stomach, but restored hope. A hope she took with her into hearings, into bills, into the United States Congress. That's how change happens in Black America. Not always through grand marches, but in whispers, in coffee refills, in soft eyes, across tired tables. So if you're watching this and wondering if your life matters, if the small things you give go unnoticed, let this be your answer. Yes, they do. They matter. You matter. And someone is carrying you with them. Even now, speak Black truth. Because every Kaylin, every Jasmine, deserves to be seen before she is saved. If this story moved something in your chest, don't scroll past. Like, share, stand, subscribe. Because they silenced our voices long enough. Let's raise them louder than ever. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next story. The kind they still don't want you to hear.